So sometimes you see a book that looks really, really stupid and kind of generic, and you just expect to be really disappointed going through it. And whenever that happens, there's a slim chance that it can actually be pretty good and you'll enjoy it. Now, sometimes this goes awry, like with the Blood Rose Rebellions or the Divergence of the world, but I just read Warcross by Mary Lou, and I was actually surprised by how good it was.
This is the introduction song. It's not very good, but it's not too long.
So the main reason that I was not really pumped for this book was that I have read a little bit of Mary Lou's work before. I've read her Legend trilogy. I have not read The Young Elites, though, which is another series by her. And Legend, the first book I felt was... I felt it was pretty good, but it was also very standard. You know, it was, there wasn't really anything new. There was... The character archetypes and the plot were all pretty, you know, we've seen it before. However, it was still, you know, it was still enjoyable. But then the second and third books, things started to slide downhill quite a bit. And so, I didn't particularly like the series overall. So, when I saw this one, I thought the idea was a little neat, but just knowing Mary Lou, I just wasn't super pumped for it, but I decided to give it a shot anyways. And again, I quite liked it. It was pretty good. So this book is about an 18-year-old girl named Emika Chen, or Emika Chen. I don't know. I don't know how to say her name. I'm just going with Emika. If I'm saying it wrong, send all your comments here. And so Emika is a bounty hunter and hacker in near-future New York. Like, this book, they never specify the year, but it's probably about 15 to 20 years in the future, based on the technology and everything. And Emika has, like, no money at all, and so she, out of desperation, hacks into this really popular game called Warcross and tries to steal items, and long story short, she winds up getting caught, and then she gets called by the company that makes Warcross to try and help them out with some difficulties with hackers they've been having, and then just all kinds of crazy stuff happens from there. Yeah, this one, I mean, not a whole lot happens plot-wise until the second half of the book, but I'd still rather not spoil too much of it. The biggest thing that I just absolutely loved about this book, and was by far the best part, was the setting and the technology of it. Now, I'm a fan of sci-fi. I like, you know, space operas, I like near-future stuff, and cyberpunk. Just, I like sci-fi. But this one connected with me a little bit more than something like Star Trek would. Because, again, this is only 15 to 20 years in the future. And the main technology that they talk about in this are these things called Neuralink glasses. And what they are, they're like virtual reality glasses that you put on. They have earbuds and everything. And they literally jack into your brain and allow you to see virtual reality, but it seems real. Because, you know, your brain is tricking itself into believing that it is real. And that's cool as shit. Okay, I guess I have to make a Sword Art Online joke now. Hold on, give me a minute. Okay, so, no, not that one. That one sucks. That one's already been used. That one's already been used. Already been used. Ah. Kirito. More like Mr. Perfect Mary Sue. Okay, so, Sword Art Online joke is out of the way. Now, these Neuralink glasses, they aren't really realistic by today's standards, but we almost have technology that's kind of similar to that. We do have VR technology. And so, there's a little bit more connection between the real world and this world than there would be between the real world and something like Star Trek. I mean, as much as I like that, like Star Trek, The Expanse, just all of that, it may as well be happening in a fantasy world for all the connection we have to it. Like, it's cool to think about, but it's just not realistic, and it doesn't seem like something that actually could happen in my lifetime, whereas the Neuralink glasses and all that really does seem like that. And so while there are a couple little holes in the technology, I honestly don't care, just because it's cool, and I want to live in a world where that's possible. So the setting for this just kicks all kinds of ass, and I absolutely loved it. The second thing that I really liked about this book was Emika. Now, at first, at the beginning, I really absolutely loved her. In the middle, she dips a little bit and becomes more like standard, and her personality's a bit more understated. But then at the end, she ramps up again, and hopefully that stays through the sequels as well. Because, yeah, this one was sequel baiting hard. And I'll get to that in a minute. So Emika, despite being an orphan that got cast out and had to live on the street by herself from the time she was a teenager, she is actually a lot less standard than it might sound. So, again, she's a hacker, but this book is... It doesn't have totally 100% realistic hacking, but it is more realistic than you would expect, at least. You know, it actually does take time, and it's difficult to do, and, you know, it's not just typing on a keyboard for 10 seconds and then suddenly you're in the Pentagon's mainframe, you know? It's more realistic than that, so I did appreciate that. And she's also just this fierce... At the beginning, she's very fiercely independent and just is out of options, and that's why she turns to such desperate measures to try and make ends meet. And while she does have some baggage, emotional baggage from her past, it doesn't affect her all that much. You know, she doesn't spend every other page complaining about, oh, hey, my dad's dead. Well, like, you know, she's sad about it, but it's also in the past. She's moved on from it for the most part. And so she comes across as... she's still young, but she's a lot less immature than a lot of other characters of her age. If that makes sense. And so, because of all that, Emika, I felt, was a very, very strong protagonist. And, yeah, she does... the book is told from her point of view, and she doesn't have the strongest voice ever, but... whatever. I was willing to look past that just because I felt that her personality more than made up for it. Beyond those two things, though, which both were phenomenal, believe me, this book doesn't have a whole lot going for it, honestly. Because, see, most of the other characters are just not really fleshed out. Now, the guy that invented the Neuralink glasses becomes friends with Emika, and his name is Hideo. And he's fine. You know, at the end, well, I don't want to spoil it, but just, he gets a bit of development later on, you know, beyond just being the mysterious billionaire. And, again, he's fine. Just nothing to really say there. All the other characters, I barely even remember their names. I mean, there's one who's kind of a dick. There's a French guy. There's a guy in a wheelchair. There's a gay dude. And then there's another one. And that's their personality. They don't have anything else going. So, just move past that. However, the biggest problem I really have with this is the plot. Because this one kind of feels like two different plots which individually are okay, but then they got smashed together and they just don't mix well. So, the first plot is Emika, after she hacks into the Warcross game, she gets hired by Hideo to help find some hackers that are causing them trouble. And that leads to her being involved with terrorists and assassination plots and just crazy stuff. And at first I really would have preferred if they had stuck with that one. But then the more I think about it, that one's just... it's not bad, but it is a little bit more standard. You know, like, it's a life and death scenario. There's bad guys. There's evil people. There's assassins. We've seen this sort of thing done before. And then the other plot, while Hideo is having her investigate, in order to pull suspicion away from her, he actually enters her into the Warcross tournament as a player. And that doesn't make much sense. I'll get to that in a second. But this is the second plot, is her just being a Warcross player and working with her team to try and win the tournament. And at first, that one didn't seem as interesting. But later on, I realized that even though it's not a life and death scenario, I honestly think I would have liked that a lot better. And that's just because it's more unique. You know, it's basically, it would be a sports story with video games, you know? Like, we've all seen sports movies and shows and stuff, and they can be really, really cheesy if you do them wrong, but if you do them right, they can just be heartwarming and fun as well. And, you know, because this is a video game, you're basically making up your own sport. You can throw in new rules and everything, and just have fun with it, go all out. So, yeah, I really would have liked if they had just gone that direction. But having those two stories together, they just don't mesh together well. Because during the more serious terrorist hacker parts, the Warcross stuff just seems juvenile and pointless. But then during the more fun Warcross tournament parts, it makes all of the hacker stuff just seem over the top and cheesy. So, just when they go together like that, they both just make each other seem worse. And so, for that reason, I really wish that this book had just chosen a plot and stuck with it. I would also just like to point out that the game Warcross and Emika being entered in the tournament does not make any sense at all. So, let me explain. So, Emika being entered in the tournament doesn't make sense because why the fuck would she need to hide her identity at all? Like, she could just be someone who's working for Hideo, and they could just keep it on the down low, and he could give her access to whatever she needs access to do in order to find out who is being a hacker and who's doing crazy shit and why and what exactly they're planning. She really didn't need to be a player in order to do that. So I feel like Mary Lou just really wanted to add the tournament subplot, but again, they don't mesh well together at all. The other thing I'd like to say is that while Warcross, it does sound really fun on the surface. I mean, like I said, it's virtual reality, and I don't think they ever really explain if you're actually moving with your avatar moving, or if there's some sort of controls, or if it jacks into your brain, again, like Sword Art Online, to prevent your body from moving, but it still feels like you're moving. I don't know, but whatever, that's not really important. But the actual gameplay of Warcross just doesn't make a lot of sense when you dive into it. So, they don't describe it a whole lot, but it sounds like it's just a team-based action RPG, kind of like League of Legends or Dota, I guess. I mean, again, they don't explain all that much, so it's really hard to tell. But, you know, it's two teams of 5 people each, and one member of each team has this thing called an artifact, which floats above their head, and the objective of the other team is to steal that before their artifact gets stolen. And on paper that sounds okay, but they don't really explain how the combat works. They don't explain how the classes work, because apparently Emika has made it an architect, which is one of the classes, but they never explain exactly what her job is. I mean, through context, I'm pretty sure she's supposed to be like a controller in League of Legends, where she just sets traps and prevents the enemy team from getting too out of hand and buffs her teammates and stuff. But again, they never make it explicitly clear. Now, something like Fighter or Shield, which are 2 other classes in this, those are pretty self-explanatory. That's just, you know, that's DPS and tank. That's, you know, whatever. But, you know, again, if this book had just been focused totally on the Warcross tournament, they could have gone into extreme detail on that, and it would have been much better. Also, Emika is apparently a much lower level than all the other players, but she can still compete with them somehow. I don't know how that works, especially since the character classes are supposedly more equipment-based rather than ability-based, so I guess it's more like an FPS in that regard. I really don't know. I mean, I'll admit I'm being kind of pedantic on this, but I just can't bring myself to overlook that sort of thing. I mean, I like video games, and it annoys me when something like this just doesn't put much thought into the design of it, and just sort of slaps the video game label on it, like we'll all just accept it. You know, I just can't do that. Sorry. So beyond that, there's not a lot else to say. I mean, the setting for this book is fantastic. The main character is great, but nothing else really stands out. I mean, the Warcross tournament subplot is kind of good, and if it had been tweaked a little, it would have been great as well. But it just doesn't mesh well with the hacker-terrorist subplot, which is also pretty good, but it doesn't get enough focus throughout the book because it has to be split with the other one. And none of the characters really stood out to me, other than Emika, obviously. So this one, again, it's really, really good. I would like to emphasize that as much as possible. But it fell short of its full potential, I felt. But still, just check it out. You know, I don't regret reading this in the slightest, and I will probably read the sequel whenever it comes out. I would imagine in about a year, because this book's only a few weeks old. But, you know, whatever happens, this one, if you like video games, I guess check it out. If you like near-future sci-fi and cyberpunk, check it out as well. And if you watched this far, please subscribe. Bye.